Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today is August 10th, 2026, and we are here this afternoon in the conference room, County Commissioners Conference Room at our Administrative Services Building in Fort Collins. I welcome you, and today we have a work session with our Director of Planning Infrastructure, Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources. I am Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shad McNally, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners of Larimer County. Joining me at the conference table is Commissioner Stevens and Commissioner Kafalis. We also have our County Manager, Lorenda Volker, joining us. And then we have Director Leslie Ellis, who is our Director of Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources, or better known as CPIRs. We have a few things on our agenda today, and I'll turn it over to you, Leslie, since we have those three items. And welcome, everyone. Good to see some faces we don't always see on Monday afternoons. Great to see everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. Leslie Ellis, Community Planning, Infrastructure, and Resources Director, as you mentioned. Good afternoon again to everybody. Happy Monday. We do have items today that are community development, and Rebecca's out today, so I'm covering for her on those items. The first one is a pretty brief update. That's a code compliance item. That's the Sparling case, and Amy White's here to present that. I asked her also to give you a quick overview of what to expect at the hearing this afternoon, since she has that item that's a discussion item. So we'll do both of those items. And then the bulk of our conversation today is around the special events land use code work that's happening. And I'll introduce that item as we get there. And then we'll move on to the other updates after that. So thank you. I'll turn it over to Amy.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Amy White, Code Compliance Supervisor. The first item we have is a resolution approving the certification to the Larimer County Treasurer of zoning violation penalties as a special assessment. We did a property cleanup on a property up on top of Storm Mountain. This was the second time we've been at this particular address. The first time we went in under a entry and seizure warrant, which only allowed us 10 days to do the cleanup. This time we went in under a court order. We got a motion for default judgment, the order from the court, and so that gave us more time to get in and get it cleaned up. But because it was a court order, we don't follow our normal lien process. So this one is similar to the other court cases that we're doing and will be attached to the property as a special assessment moving forward. And the amount currently of that is $41,520.54. It could be that there will be additional towing fees, but per the towing statutes, we can't get to that figure until 45 days after we actually towed the vehicles, which isn't for another couple weeks. So there could be some minor costs that will come along later, but we'll certainly capture those if and when that happens. So are there any questions on that particular item?
Commissioners, you have questions? No, we don't have any questions. Thank you for that update.
So then I'll move on to what's going to happen this afternoon at the updated rubbish ordinance reading. You'll remember on July 10th or 13th, we did the first reading. Thank you, Jenny. And so we did the first reading. It's now been published the requisite number of days. And now we're coming back for the second reading. And because we have not heard from any of the public, it's just a reading of the title itself. So you don't need any popcorn or pop this time, Commissioner Kafalis. And after we'll have a motion that'll go up on the screen for you guys. And then Commissioner Shattuck McNally, after the hearing, will actually bring over a blank copy, which you'll sign. And then we'll get that published for another 30 days. And then after that, the ordinance will become effective. So September 12th-ish is what we're hoping for. We have several that we've kind of been holding on to until we had this increased flexibility. So you might see some increased action on the code compliance front. Any questions on that one?
Any questions? Well done, Amy. Great work. Thank you very much.
Well, and thank you to Christine, my partner in crime back here. She keeps me moving forward.
Well, thank you, Christine, for keeping things moving.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. All right. So we'll move on to the special events item today, and I'm covering for Rebecca, as mentioned. Samantha Mott and Michael Whitley are here to do the presentation, and they've been working on this project along with Denise Roybal with the team that's working on it. And so while it's been a few months since you've had a discussion about this, it was back in February when you had a work session with the Planning Commission. There have been a few events since then. That was right after an online forum for public comments around the project, and then the team has also had several community engagement events in May. And then the draft that you now have before you was posted on July 14th, and that was posted on our Engage Larimer.gov webpage and accompanied by press release and social media information. You'll have another work session on this topic on Wednesday with the Planning Commission. So this is really just your first opportunity to see the information, ask questions, provide feedback, and then continue the conversation. And there is a posting and availability for the public to continue to comment through the 16th. So all of those comments then the team will take that information and that input and do another draft of the standards in time for a hearing at the Planning Commission on September 16th. And then that would be when the Planning Commission could hold a public hearing and provide a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for a public hearing on the 28th of September. So that's what's currently scheduled. Of course, if there's more time needed or additional thoughts or considerations around this project, then those could be scheduled at another time too. If that plays out according to schedule, then the standards would take effect for January 1st and be in place for the 2027 season.
Can I pause you just there? In the packet, I'm not sure, can you share during your presentation, you don't have to do it right now, but how many events you had, where you said several, but where and attendance, and I'm certain that's something you're going to talk about, but I'm curious about those, where they were, how many people, what kind of feedback that'd be. If you haven't, I didn't see it in the things, I just double checked, but it would be nice to hear about that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think, and then along those lines too, certainly if you have any other questions for the team, please do ask those. I think really the point of being here today is to hear your input. If you have the sense that the standards drafted don't quite hit the mark or there's additional work that needs to be done to reflect your input, I think that's what this conversation will start today.
And just real
yes.
quick, Leslie, are you saying, just for clarification for us in the public, for us as commissioners, this is not our only chance if like we go home and wake up in the 3 a.m. like I do and think, oh, I wish I'd asked that question, we could still bring some things to you. Okay.
Absolutely. And,
right.
and you'll have that other conversation on Wednesday, and then certainly, at least a week to provide additional input, either in person or in writing or however you prefer to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, and so just a quick overview, and then I'll hand it off here very quickly. But just as a reminder, in recent years, the commissioners have also approved updates to the fee schedule for special events, and then also standards around blackout dates for Horsetooth. And so the team, including community development and natural resources and engineering, have done some work on special events, but Article 7 of the Land Use Code, which sets the standards out for private events, hasn't really been addressed for many years. And so that's really what you'll hear more about today. And I think while, certainly events have changed and grown and we've seen pressure on neighbors and natural resources and whatnot, there's certainly these events that build and serve communities and achieve fundraising and accomplish other, beneficial things in the community. So I think we want to strike a balance in terms of how these regulations apply, and you've provided that input as well. So Article 7, again, is just one part of how the standards get administered. There's also the fee schedule and then the accompanying kind of application materials as well. So if you have questions about any of those, the team, I think, can answer that. So again, the team's here today to start that conversation with the board and present to you where they are in the process. You'll be able to continue your input, and then for the public, they can continue, anybody out there can continue to provide input online through the 16th of this month as well. So I'll pass it along to the two of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Samantha Mott, Senior Planner. Michael Whitley and I will both be presenting to you, and I'm going to probably go through these first slides quickly. As Leslie mentioned, the work session goals, we want to share proposed updates to Article 7, governing the special events in unincorporated Larimer County, and seek your guidance on our proposed amendments and proposed updates. As was mentioned, the code requirements have not been revisited in several years, and they do not fully address the scale, the impact, and the variety of events that now occur throughout the county. We sort of have a one-size-fits-all approach in our regulations, and that doesn't work. And I should mention, sorry, before I go on, that I did hand out a copy of the PowerPoint presentation to the commissioners and a few of you in attendance today. Focus areas. So when we began this process of looking at special event regulations, as Leslie mentioned, there were several meetings, and we looked at specific focus areas. Applicability, when is a special event required? Event types, how should the standards and process vary for different types of events? Permit requirements, what performance criteria and code requirements must be met to receive a permit? Limitations and prohibitions. Are there any limitations on event activities, hours of operation, location, or types of event? And accountability. How should permit conditions be enforced, and how should event organizers be held accountable? Based on that, and going to your question, Commissioner Shattuck McNally, I'm going to present a little bit. We're going to talk about some of our recommendations. I'm going to hand it over to Michael, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the public outreach that we've done. So I should get to your question. So a lot of the code, it was refining and clarifying and cleaning some things up, because one of the things we found is some of the language made it hard to apply these consistently. So we tried to clean that up. But then there were very specific changes. And I know at our previous work session, the joint BCC-PC work session, we discussed at length about some of the restrictions, the flexibility and being more restrictive and trying to find that balance. We received feedback from not just the commissioners, from the public, from event hosts, from event attendees, just kind of mixed feedback, like with some want it more restrictive, some want it less restrictive. So trying to find the best balance of all that feedback and input. So just a brief summary of what our proposed code language is recommending is the land use code currently excludes all personal events from requiring a special event permit, regardless of the number of attendees. We have proposed that any personal event with an overall attendance exceeding 100 people would require a special event permit. We also, in our draft language, we cleaned up the definition of personal events, and we added a couple of other definitions that were missing from the code. We also, number 2, currently events on private property that require a permit, Currently, events on private property require a permit when the overall attendance exceeds 40 people. We did look at changing that number, but our recommendation is based on mixed feedback. We are not proposing to change that. So right now, it's written that if it exceeds 40 people, it requires a special event permit. If it's 40 or less, it doesn't require, just as it says right now.
Can I pause you right there? Because that was a concern I had, because we've had a lot of folks, and I won't name them publicly, but they're frequent flyers that this has been a problem. They don't even want to apply. They think they have, I would say that we have less than 40, and they do it. So, and they were more than 40 and we had photos of that. So when you say mixed feedback, from who?
I think and Michael, jump in. I think the feedback was from the public and from people that hold events. I think we talked about that, and I remember that was a concern of yours, and we did get some feedback from making that more restrictive, and we got some feedback about making it less restrictive. And I think one of the things we talked about is Like the 40, putting a number, no matter what the number is, there may be people that say, I'm going to be under that number, whatever the number is. But
It might be easier to count 25 versus 40, where we had to actually have people take out drone shots and look and count. I mean, that's kind of the 40 number is kind of odd, and that's why I'm asking about that. I think it's easier to show over 25 versus like 40. So I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I do recall from previous, I'm Michael Whitley, Senior Planner with the Larimer County Planning Division. So I actually do recall, even from the BCC and PC work session that we held last year, actually earlier this year, excuse me, that there was mixed feedback with regards to increasing the number of, the threshold for when a permit's required. And then, of course, yes, we do recall that you did specifically,
Increase, yeah.
express a desire to have that lower number.
Well, certainly don't
the
want to
number
increase it because
lower.
then we'll have things everywhere. But I'm just still I'll be very, very vocal about this, just to kind of heads up that I still think that number it's easy for a lot. We have a few people they just don't even think they have to apply for anything because they just say, oh, we're under 40, we didn't need to apply. But they've proven twice now that it's been way over 40. So I just don't understand, it's just going to give more headaches, and then the neighbors are going to just, I'm going to hear about it from the folks in that part of the county that why did you not change this? They've been doing this for years. Why is this not fixed? So I just wanted to give that feedback. So Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, so, I think, to me, 40 sounds good. I think that we do have ways to penalize folks who are not, I guess, one thing I do remember talking about is not having the policy based on bad actors, but really having it based on what feels reasonable. And so, I mean, we do have a way, I'm assuming, I'm kind of looking at Amy, but we do have a way to sort of penalize bad actors if we have like the same people doing this over and over again. Is that right? Am I right with
I
that?
believe that was not in the code. We didn't have consequences for people who broke this. We don't have, like, you can't apply again, or you can't have this event. And that's happened 3 years in a row where we've had to actually send sheriff's office and drones out to do the counting. So we're not just counting some bad actors, but I do think this is cost resources of the county, having folks having to respond to this and actually causing wear and tear on forest land in the Rocky Mountain National Park. And we didn't have any teeth. That's another reason why we did this. We didn't have any consequences for people who violated, not having a liquor license, not having a permit, misrepresenting how many people they're going to have. And so that's another reason we needed this, was we needed a consequence for those people who are not following the code. Am I correct? Because we don't have a consequences right now.
We did add some language to the proposed draft that does include penalties that include forfeiture of financial guarantees if we require financial guarantees for a particular special event. But also, we have the ability to withhold special event permits if we know that there has been a violation of any of the regulations. And that can be both for the property owner and/or for the event holder. So the property owner may or may not be the same person that holds the actual event, but we did write in there that we do have the ability to withhold permits should we know that there's a pattern of non-compliance.
Okay, I'll be ready with I just think we need more teeth. We have some people who are just not going to follow this, so.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Commissioner. The next recommendation is number 3, increasing the number of allowable events on non-residential properties from 3 to 6 per calendar year. So currently, our land use code allows properties that are eligible for applying for special event permits to apply for 3 special event permits. There was a discussion about, should we do this by zoning? Should we do this by use? And the way that we're proposing it is based on the zoning. So a zoning district that allows a single unit dwelling as a use by right would be limited to only 3 special event permits. Other properties that don't allow a single unit dwelling as a use by right, they could be eligible for 6 special event permits. And we do have some maps showing you where those zoning districts are located throughout the county. When I hand over the presentation to Michael, he's going to pull up those maps and show you. The next is our current code allows up to 30 days per year for special events. And it allows, and we're not proposing to change that 30 days. But it also, the events have to be consecutive. We have kept the 30 days, as I mentioned, but we're now allowing some flexibility to occur on non-consecutive days. The way the code reads is they should be, like a special event should be, consecutive days, let's say Friday through Sunday. However, somebody could apply to have a special event, let's say that, they're going to have it 2 weekends, but they're not going to have it during the weekdays. They could apply to have the special event on non-consecutive days. The director would review that request, and there's certain criteria in the code that the director would look at. So that would be on a case-by-case. And one of the other things we're looking at or we're proposing is to remove the limitation of 1 special event per month. So right now our code limits you to 1 special event per month. That gets a little problematic when you see people that have maybe something that's a weekend event and the weekend falls, the beginning or end of a month falls on a weekend. So they may have something like the 1st, 2nd, and then, like the 31st and the 1st. And that means they couldn't have any until like a month after. So it just builds in a flexibility. That has nothing to do with changing the number of events they could get or the number of days. It just allows for some flexibility. And again, the director would look at that. Or actually, for the limitation of 1 per month, that's not anything the director would have to look at. And I'm going to turn it over to Michael to talk about the next recommendations, and then we'll come back to public comment and public outreach.
So next set. So we did update and add definitions to the code. Also, we tweaked the review criteria and performance standards. As we mentioned at the beginning, right now the code is written as a one-size-fits-all. There's one set of criteria, there's one set of performance standards, but we have different types of events. And so that goes to the next item, 7. So we provided general information and requirements for all events, and then we did separate out sections of the code amendment that specifically address private land events. We added a section for road events. That was currently a separate freestanding ordinance that had to be referred to separately. We incorporated that into the Article 7 and made a few changes to that. And we added a section for county-owned natural resources events, because each of those events has different operating characteristics, review criteria, performance standards, et cetera. And so we tailored the criteria and performance standards to those types of events. Next, we added section or language to the code that requires community events, membership clubs, and membership-only organizations to apply for special event permits only when that involves significant outdoor gatherings or activity or displaces required parking. Those types of events are not very well defined. They're actually not defined specifically in our code, and we have had problems with consistency with regards to administering the regulations with community events, membership clubs, and membership-only organizations. This makes it clear when a special event permit is required and when it is not, and when it is exempt from requiring a special event permit. Next, we tweaked our regulations with regards to collateral. So we have information in the code right now that allows us to collect collateral for events. My understanding from talking with the special event administrator is that we've never required collateral. But for larger events, it actually makes sense, and our enforcement kind of ties back to, for those events that actually get a permit, to the ability to collect and then use collateral should a special event organizer not perform, either not comply with the condition of approval, not clean up the site in the required time frame, which is 48 hours after the end of the event, or otherwise just not comply with kind of site restoration. So we mentioned that we differentiated between residential and other properties in the code, and there's the use of the term commercial in a couple of these, kind of in the memo and such, but really what the code defines is residential property for the purpose of these regulations. And as Samantha touched on, so we consider a zoning district to be residential if it allows single-unit dwellings by right. So you guys may be surprised, I was actually surprised to know, we have 38 different zoning districts in unincorporated Larimer County. That does include planned development and rural plan development. Those two zoning districts, planned development and rural plan development, could consist of almost anything because they're site-specific and they're written specifically for a particular application. Those may or may not include residential uses, and so if a property is zoned planned development or rural plan development, we would actually have to go to that specific approval to see what was allowed in that zoning district. But for the other 36 zoning districts, it's clear either single-unit development is allowed by right or it is not. And of the 36 zoning districts where it's clear, kind of by looking at a table, 11 of those zoning districts are not residential. And we have a map that shows kind of the distribution of that through the county. Now, these maps are not intended to, kind of be easily, kind of put your finger on a property and say, kind of this specific property is or is not residential, but it kind of shows the general distribution. And this is an overall county map. Now, the only clearly identifiable cluster here is Rawhide. So anything that is in red is a zoning district, one of the 11 zoning districts that does not allow residential uses. And so that would be eligible for 6 special event permits. Now, obviously, a property like Rawhide's not going to be hosting special events, but we're basing it on zoning. We have some kind of call-outs for specific areas. Again, just kind of showing the general distribution. And it's kind of informative to know that if the area is white, that zoning is residential. And so only if a parcel shows up as red does it indicate that 6 events would be allowed per year. If it's white, then it's the standard 3. So we do have a cluster of commercial zoning in the Crystal Lakes, Red Feather Lakes, and Glacier View area. So Beaver Meadows has a residential or non-residential zoning. There are a handful of properties throughout the Red Feather Lakes region area, including downtown and then some outlying areas, mostly along some of the more major roads, including where the restaurants are located and such. And then we do have a spot of non-residential zoning in Glacier View. Next slide. Again, Rawhide is kind of an outlier. That's our largest cluster of non-residential zoning in the county. But then in the Wellington area, there are only 2 little dots of commercial zoning or non-residential zoning. So the southwest corner of Owl Canyon Road and I-25 has some non-residential zoning. And then there's a little spot of red on the west side of Wellington that you may be able to pick out. I don't know if you have a. I can't see your cursor, but
Yeah,
yes, thank you.
my cursor's pointing.
Next slide. Again, just kind of giving a broad regional perspective, in the Fort Collins area, we have a lot of non-residential zoning along the Mulberry Corridor, spots of it along I-25, and a lot of it along 287/Highway 14 as you get north of Fort Collins. Also, the landfill is a non-residential zoning district, but again, you're not going to have events at the landfill, most likely.
And the behavioral health
And the
facility.
behavioral health facility, correct. And lastly, we've got Loveland, Windsor, and Berthoud. Again, you can kind of see, again, from a kind of a regional perspective, the non-residential zoning tends to cluster along the major arterial and higher classification roadways. Highway 34 has a lot. I-25, there are clusters of commercial zoning. there's a large concentration of non-residential zoning south and southeast specifically of Loveland. A lot of those are sand and gravel mines. So just because you see a cluster of red does not necessarily mean that that is, kind of commercial activity. It can be industrial mining, et cetera. But that kind of gives you a perspective. We also have quite a bit of commercial zoning along 287 between Loveland and Berthoud, and then in the Berthoud area. So again, just kind of broad brush, kind of to give you a sense of where and the scale of residential zoning is.
I'm curious, Michael, these ones, I think, assuming it's Highway 34, they're large parcels. It looks like it would be, is that any of our open space, or is that, as it goes, I know it's not quite up the canyon yet because it's kind of north of where I live. So is that there's a commercial winery there, some other things? I'm just curious about that.
Actually, our wineries are not located there. So I do know that the far western portion is part of Sylvandale. It's actually residential on the edge of Sylvandale. And where a lot of the non-residential zoning came from along the 34th quarter specifically was, until 2023, we had a zoning district called T-Tourist. And the T-Tourist zoning district allowed a mix of residential and non-residential uses oriented to tourist-oriented development. When the code was amended in 2023, the T-Tourist zoning district was changed to commercial destination, which is a non-residential zoning district. And so a lot of those properties along 34 and the clusters that we see had previously been T-Tourist and were reclassified to commercial destination in 2023 when we changed our land use code significantly and consolidated a lot of the zoning districts and renamed a lot of the zoning districts.
Okay, that's helpful. I might ask that again, just so I need to kind of process that. Thank you.
Certainly, you're welcome.
And one of the things that changed when it was T-Tourist, it did allow single-unit dwellings. So when it changed to commercial destination, it did remove that as a use by right.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Okay, moving in to just provide you some information on the community engagement that we've done. So we did reach out to reviewing agencies, and what we mean by reviewing agencies are the agencies that will review special event permits once they're submitted. So we reached out to them as we were drafting the code amendments, and in fact, our other team member, Denise Ruibal, is actually in a meeting with some of the reviewing agencies right now to talk through these proposed code amendments. So I'm sure we'll have feedback from that at the work session, the joint work session on Wednesday. But we did incorporate some of their feedback. I think a lot of feedback was in some of the more specific regulations regarding road events, natural resource events, and even some of the private land events. The red line and clean versions, as well as the summary chart, were shared with them to provide that additional feedback. Event organizers were emailed the red line and the clean versions, as well as the summary chart, allowing them to review the proposed updates and provide feedback. And then the neighbors and general public, we did email notification, press release, updated the web page, social media, and we used our software, our public input software, to share the proposed update with as many people as possible. One of the attachments for the work session on Wednesday that's also attached to the agenda for today was the public input that we'd received so far. I think there were only four comments at the time that this was prepared. Michael and I were looking at that earlier today, and there are 13 comments now. So we will prepare an addendum and have that for you, get that out to you tomorrow, so you'll have that before the work session on Wednesday. I think this goes to your question earlier, Commissioner Shattuck McNally, that we did have those two open houses. We had one in Fort Collins and one in Estes. Those were on, I think, May 12th and May 13th. May 12th was the Fort Collins open house, and we had it in the hearing room here. And then May 13th was the one in Estes Park, and we had it at the community center,
Yeah.
the Estes Park Community Center. We did not have a lot of attendance at those open houses. I believe we had 3 or 4 people at the Fort Collins and kind of the same number, maybe 3 at the Estes Park open house.
I'm sorry, can you say that? How many?
3 or 4 at the Fort Collins and then 3 at the Estes Park, which is one of the reasons, as Leslie mentioned, that we sent out the proposed amendments for public input. We sent those out on July 14th, and we're keeping that open until August 16th to give people a little over a month to provide comments and input. Next step, so as I just mentioned, we'll keep that open until August 16th. Then our next step is to incorporate feedback comments, not just from the work sessions, but looking at the public comment. We'll make any adjustments to our proposed regulations, and then we'll have a report with our proposal for the Planning Commission. That will get published on September 9th. That Planning Commission hearing is scheduled right now for September 16th. And then our Board of County Commissioners hearing is anticipated to be September 28th. And then if those are adopted, we plan on working on the rest of the year, putting together the materials so that this can be rolled out for events in 2027. And I believe that concludes our presentation, and we're happy to take feedback, comments, and open the floor for discussion.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions, but we'll start with the other commissioners. Commissioner Kafas, did you have questions and comments?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple of quick comments. First of all, thank you very much for your hard work and diligence on this project. Secondly, just to inform you, and not meaning to be disrespectful, but I will not be attending the joint work session on Wednesday. But I will, if I have additional feedback, I will, through Leslie, or send you guys emails or something. One other comment is that based on the mixed input that we've received through the Planning Commission and others, at this time I do support the 40-person threshold because I guess it's the status quo. Some wanted higher, some wanted lower. So maybe just keep it where it is and evaluate that as we go forward. And then my questions are, well, one is, let's see. I think, as you may be aware, one of my biggest concerns is that we move in the direction of greater flexibility, more streamlined processes, taking into account community events that have occurred historically, such as ones up in Red Feather Lakes and other communities. So I guess related to that, Michael and Samantha, what in the proposed land use code updates address that? In other words, that we're making it easier for folks up in Red Feather. They can either use a previous special events permit or those kinds of things to acknowledge that historically, traditionally, stuff's been happening up there, and so far so good. Does that make sense, colleagues?
It does.
Do you care to comment on that, or?
I've got a couple of thoughts. So
Oh, good.
the Red Feather Lakes Property Owners Association building would be
Indoor.
classified as a community building in the current code and would be exempt from requiring special event permits as long as the events are indoors or if the outdoor activity is not significant and doesn't displace required parking. And the kind of significance with regards to the outdoor activity is at the discretion of the community development director. We actually had specific conversations with the director. That allows for limited outdoor activity as long as it is not potentially disruptive to neighbors. And so at the discretion of the director. So there's a big difference between a carnival and a parking lot and just having maybe a couple of vendors or a couple of focused outdoor activities associated with a event that is primarily indoors. So if it's primarily indoors or limited outdoor activity and doesn't displace required parking, at the Property Owners Association building in particular, that would be exempt from special event permits. That property is also zoned commercial destination, which would be, if a special event permit was required, it would allow 6 per year.
That's right. Thank you. May I just continue with a couple more?
Just want to know that we're running out of time, and I know Commissioner
Yes, I
Stevens
know,
had some.
but I would like to offer my input. Okay. Well, maybe we could, the parking thing is an interesting thing, especially with their 4th of July and their opinion that the law enforcement people are fine with the parking. They've done a better job of redirecting cars and parking along 67J and so forth. So I appreciate that there's an effort to try to make things a little bit more flexible. I think on the definitions, two more questions, please. On the definitions for personal events, and I think somewhere in the code you said something like if it's not more than 100 people. I think I read right below that in the code, it said if it's a memorial service or a celebration of life or something along those lines, there's no number threshold.
Correct.
Could you explain that, please?
Yes, so
okay.
we did make the deliberate decision, at least as the draft, of course, you commissioners have the final say with regards to what gets adopted, to exempt celebrations of life, memorials, et cetera, and not have a specific cap on it. One of those considerations is that a memorial or a celebration of life tends to be close to the person's death, and it is hard to get through a special event process. We typically require that they apply 90 days ahead of the event. And so that's hard to do for those specific types of kind of celebrations, and they also don't occur that often. And the large ones, there are occasionally large celebrations of life, but they tend to be small gatherings, mostly for family, moderately sized, small, moderately sized, not disruptive to a neighborhood, and they have a specific purpose that are not conducive to actually applying for and going through a process to get approval.
Thank you. So that means that when I die, and perhaps more than 100 people want to show up, if we do anything to acknowledge that, we won't have to get a special events permit?
Correct.
Okay, good to
Yes.
know. My last question, and that is on the retainer or collateral thing. Was there any consideration in your discussions, deliberations, if that might exclude certain entities that can't afford an upfront thing? And yet I totally support making this more enforceable, making sure that people are accountable. And that's one way to deal with that 40-person threshold thing. Please.
Whether or not we collect collateral and the amount of collateral in the event that we do is completely at the discretion of the Community Development Director. So the director has complete discretion with regards to collateral. And as I mentioned, I'm not aware of any instances where we've actually required collateral for a special event. That has been in the code for a number of years, but it's not something that is actively, and consistently applied. But we do, you commissioners have seen occasionally very large events that come through that would be very conducive to collecting and then possibly acting on collateral.
Absolutely. Thank you kindly. I appreciate both of you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yeah, so thank you. I think we are striking the right balance here because, in reading the only 4 comments that we got, there's people that are like, this is too intrusive, and there's other people that are like, I don't know what this means exactly, and some people that are like, I think you got it right. It's tricky because, we want events in our community. It makes our community vibrant, and we also understand, that neighbors have to deal with sometimes the aftermath of that. When I think about collateral and having sort of a deposit kind of situation, I think especially in areas that are kind of have wildlife corridor, that are more sensitive areas, especially really important to collect those dollars. So to make sure that things go back to normal, or when they're unusually sort of large and require porta potties and all that kind of stuff. That makes sense to me. So yeah, I'm kind of mostly fine with that. I think to Commissioner Shattuck McNally's response around 40 and people like, how would we deal with that? Because technically, a person could say they are having less than 40 and consistently do more than 40, and you're not collecting any dollars from those people ever. And so maybe we can think about a way that we could sort of hold, because I don't want necessarily the regulations in general to be based on bad actors. However, when there are bad actors, it would be nice to be able to have a way to, come in and adequately, sort of, get recompense from, their constant sort of breaking of the rules. So I think that piece would be important. The other question I have is, does this feel workable for staff, for code compliance, for you guys? I mean, like, I think about just the amount of work and the bandwidth and stuff like that. So have you kind of taken that into consideration as you've done this? Like, hopefully moving to 6 for some of those commercial properties will take some pressure off, and keeping some of the regulations similar, but are you guys feeling good about this? Because you have to enforce this and collect those applications and potentially collect dollars and stuff like that.
Well, I think, thank you, Commissioner Stevens, that we're trying, the code, making it clearer so we can apply it more consistently is going to be really helpful to staff. Having Denise Robal, who is the special event coordinator and processes and handles all the special events as part of this team, is extremely helpful because she brings that perspective. I know we've had conversations with co-compliance about the enforcement piece. I think there is one kind of one of the big questions that comes up that we don't have an answer to yet is, like, who's going to be doing some of this, like, follow-ups, the enforcement piece, like, how are we going to do that? How are we going to handle that staff-wise? And I think that is some of those questions haven't been answered yet, but if these are adopted, obviously we will find a way, but just trying to figure out the right person or right people. But we don't want to put into effect regulations that we aren't going to be able to enforce. I think we're feeling good about these are going to be easier for staff to administer, easier for staff to apply, and hopefully easier for the public to understand.
Yeah. A couple of additional thoughts. So special events are a little tricky because they come and go. And so it is very hard for our code compliance staff to be responsive to special events because they tend to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And typically are not working when there is an event going on. So that's where we've had discussions, and actually we had discussions with the county attorney's office, and the county attorney's office perspective is, Christine can correct me if I get anything wrong, but that for those events that we actually do permit and regulate, that collateral is absolutely the way to go, or, I'll strike absolutely, that is the way to go in terms of, collecting and then kind of enforcing on events that go through a process. And that also, kind of hurts, the pocketbook, which tends to get some response. Also, with regards to kind of disruptive events as they occur, law enforcement has the ability to enforce drunk driving, public intoxication, noise, public disturbance, those types of immediate disruptions that the sheriff's office would respond to anyway. So in the moment, and maybe there's not an officer that can respond. It depends on how many people are on staff and what the priority calls are. But that's probably our best avenue for dealing with the issue in the moment. And then working long-term with, again, collateral for those that actually go through the process, or withholding permits for those that do not. And, we can explore other options if you have additional ideas of things to incorporate.
Are you finished, Commissioner Stevens? So this doesn't fix things that I have been concerned about. When we have someone who got a permit for 500 and it had over 1,000, had alcohol when they had been denied an alcohol license, have had multiple events saying there's only 40 and they did it anyway. I'd like to make sure there is some consequence. There is some teeth. There is, well, you can't have events there for a year or something. I mean, there has to be a deterrent for some of these folks. And I know I keep hearing we don't want it for bad actors, but this has been for years, certain area in my district has taken a lot of county resources and a lot of time from you all trying to chase this down. And it has been environmentally damaging. And so I just think those are things to kind of consider. And I think when you talk about responding, all I can hear is the people have called. We called the sheriff's office trying to complain they couldn't come, then the thing was over. And that just feels, for those people who have called, and there is no, and I have had to call, and there is no one to come. And so I'm thinking about those residents that it feels like, well, I pay my taxes and people aren't responding and I had to put up with this. So those are things I want to make sure those folks and those voices, because they may not have known to respond to all of this. And I think that's important as well. If you don't live out in unincorporated parts and you haven't had something loud and proud and dust creating next to your property and you can't even go outside and enjoy your backyard, or it goes into the middle of the night and you can't sleep, then I mean, it's easy to maybe dismiss the impacts on that, right? And so I think that's important that we think about that. Also, I think I like the mapping and the zoning thing. I think that makes it, I'm assuming that makes it simpler for you to say, this doesn't work here, right? And I think that's great. And I appreciate the maps because that gives me an idea of what that looks like, and that should also help with you all. So, but I think since we're almost out of time, I have some more things, but I do think I feel like one of the reasons that we needed this was for more enforcement. And I'm sure I'm sure Leslie knows exactly probably what half a dozen in the last year and a half, if not dozen stories I've had from one area that is just consistently, and even along the river corridors, we have more and more people who are having mini music festivals. Come camp on my property and come listen to these music. And that's happening up and down the canyon. So I think those are also where you just, they're not really maybe advertised, but on social media, and come camp in my backyard and I'm going to have a little mini music festival. That's happening. There's one I saw just Sunday along Highway 34 behind a business. All of a sudden I'm like, oh, those are a bunch of tents and tables and looks like they're having a big party. I wonder what that is all about. And it's behind a business, right? And so, those are things that I just, I think about traffic and just lots of things. We have a lot of busy people and then also just the wildfire risk. So I don't know if that has anything to do with if there's if there's fire restrictions. I don't know how that's enforced. Wildlife, falling. I mean, I know that's in the code, but does it need to be explicitly put back into this to be very specific what is required? I see the trash and the removal and all that stuff, but I didn't see anything about, I'm assuming we have our noise, but maybe it needs to be said again and not just referred to a thing in the code, because they probably won't go look it up. And so I think maybe we have to be very specific. Don't feed the bears, bear-proof stuff, noise after this, and I think, because they'll say, oh, I didn't know. I mean, that's easy to say if you don't have to sign right underneath it that you understand the conditions. So I don't know if that helps or not, but I have some more, but I know this was not easy to tackle. It's got a lot of complexities, and there are some places that are, trying to offer a place for a lot of our nonprofits or people to have gatherings. I really appreciate you as having someone who's had to plan and pay for a celebration of life twice in the last 3 years. We try to keep those quiet. They're usually quiet and somber, and you're right, it has to be quickly brought together, and they can be very expensive, and so I appreciate you thinking about some of that. That I thought I liked and appreciated that, because I do think when someone's going through grief, it's really important to be able for them to have one less thing to have as a challenge. So very thoughtful for a piece of that. I appreciate that very much. And I have been at a gathering recently for our deputies. That was, I heard over 2,300 people. So I just want to, say they do happen, but it looks like there was a lot of planning involved with that. And it was, at the ranch, but still it's, they can be very large. And so I think it's important that you thought about that. So any other questions, or we're ready to move on?
No, I appreciate your feedback and your comments today, and we'll also have time, to discuss before the work session on Wednesday. And thank you very much. Appreciate
Yes, thank you.
your time on this.
Thanks, and thanks, you guys put a lot of work in this, appreciate it. Okay, Leslie, you're on, you want to do SIPR's update and our community development, since you're wearing two hats today?
Yeah, thank you. And my report will be more of a community development report, which is just to remind you that the hearing this afternoon, aside from the item that you heard about from Amy White, that's code compliance, the trash ordinance that she'll be reading, there is one other item on there. It's on consent. We're not expecting any fanfare necessarily at the hearing, but the transportation capital expansion fee item is on there also, and you've heard about that at prior work sessions and whatnot. So it should be a relatively straightforward hearing this afternoon. And that's really all I have, because I was expecting this would take most of the time, so I didn't prepare a lot of other remarks.
One other request, I didn't see a map for Estes in here. Was that intentional? So that I wouldn't,
Actually, it was not. And I realized that as I was going through the maps, and I do have a map up that I could show you after the work session that shows.
or maybe you could just email it to me, that would be great.
Certainly.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Sorry, and
Yeah.
I'll email it to all three commissioners. I
Thank you.
apologize for that. I realized the oversight as I finished. I thought, oh, Estes Park, yeah. that
Well, I
would've
was
been
going to
good.
bring that up, but I thought, well, maybe that was a pretty complicated map with all the different zoning, AA, and all accommodations and all that, so.
Actually, no.
Oh, cool.
Of the approximately,
Yeah, just
actually,
show it
I
real
don't
quick.
have the ability to project, but yeah.
Okay, just do it after. All right,
Okay.
thank you. I'm
Anyway,
just curious,
it is
I'm just
actually
curious. I
fairly
was like, oh,
straightforward,
no
but-
Estes, I wonder if it's really a really wicked map, so, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you all. Appreciate the work, and at 2:27, we are adjourned. Have a great day, everybody.